I'm a 27-year-old woman, and my relationship with my 32-year-old sister has always been rocky. If you grew up with a sibling who was the golden child, you'll know exactly what I mean. She was the one who got all the attention growing up, better grades, more praise, and even a bigger allowance. I wasn't ignored, but I was always compared to her. No matter what I did, she did it better, or so everyone seemed to think. Fast forward to adulthood, and I've made a life for myself. I work as a graphic designer, and while it's not some high-profile career, I'm proud of what I've built. I've landed some impressive clients and carved out a comfortable life. Enter Derek, my boyfriend, who's 35. Derek is a self-made entrepreneur. He built his business from the ground up and has done really well for himself. We met through a mutual friend, and we just clicked. He's smart, funny, and yes, financially stable. That last part is important because it's what triggered everything that followed. The moment my sister found out about Derek, things shifted. At first, she seemed genuinely happy for me. She'd ask questions about him, how we met, what he does, what he's like. But it didn't take long before her comments started to change. They went from, "Oh, he sounds great," to, "Wow, you really lucked out with him, huh?" She'd say it with a laugh, but there was always something in her tone that felt off. I brushed it aside at first, not wanting to start drama. Then, the rumors started. A mutual friend mentioned that my sister had been telling people I was with Derek for his money. At first, I didn't believe it. Why would she do that? But then more people started hinting at the same thing. Comments like, "Must be nice to have someone who can take care of everything," or, "Wow, you're living the dream, huh?" started cropping up at family gatherings. When I confronted her about it, she just laughed it off and said she was only joking. According to her, I was being too sensitive. Our parents didn't help. They treated it like sibling banter and told me not to take it seriously. They've always been good at turning a blind eye to her behavior. But it wasn't just words. She started undermining me in subtle ways. I'd share something I was excited about, like landing a new client, and she'd respond with, "That's cute. It must be nice not to worry about paying bills with Derek around." It wasn't even true. Derek and I split things fairly, and I've always been independent. But the more she said it, the more people believed it. It escalated to social media. My sister started posting vague, passive-aggressive comments like, "Some people will do anything for a free ride," or "Funny how some people act like they earned what they were given." She never mentioned my name, but the timing and context made it obvious. Friends started messaging me, asking what was going on. It was humiliating. The tipping point came at a family dinner. Derek joined us, and my sister made a comment about how I was living every gold digger's dream. She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, with a big smile on her face like it was just a joke. The room went silent, and I felt my face burn. Derek didn't say anything at the time, but later, he admitted it had made him uncomfortable. He asked me why my sister acted that way, and I didn't have a good answer. I tried to talk to my parents again, hoping they'd step in, but they brushed it off. They told me I needed to grow a thicker skin and not let it bother me. Meanwhile, a mutual friend pulled me aside at a party to let me know my sister had been telling people I was trying to trap Derek by pushing for marriage. This was news to me since Derek and I hadn't even talked about marriage yet. The final straw was at another family gathering. My sister pulled Derek aside and told him directly to watch out because I was obviously only in it for the money. Derek didn't say much to her, but when he told me what happened, I saw red. That was it. I confronted her in front of everyone. I told her to stop spreading lies about me and that I was done letting her ruin my reputation. She smirked and said I was just being defensive because I knew it was true. Derek took my side completely, which helped, but it didn't fix the damage. I realized then that no matter what I said or did, my sister wasn't going to stop. My parents weren't going to step in, and the rest of the family was either oblivious or didn't want to get involved. Derek suggested we take a step back from my family altogether, and for the first time, I seriously considered it. I decided I was done tolerating her toxicity. If my own family wasn't going to have my back, then I'd have to stand up for myself. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the only way forward. And that's where everything changed. Update 1. After the family dinner fiasco, I decided enough was enough. I stopped attending any family events where my sister would be present. It wasn't an easy decision. Our family has always been close in a superficial way, and skipping birthdays and holidays felt strange at first. But every gathering had turned into a battleground, and I wasn't going to keep subjecting myself to her lies and insults. Of course, my parents didn't take it well. They called me almost immediately after I missed the next family dinner, asking what was going on. When I explained my reasons, they acted like I was overreacting. They said I was tearing the family apart and begged me to reconsider. My mom even tried to guilt trip me, saying, "Your sister loves you deep down." But it didn't feel like love when she was spreading lies about me. I held my ground and told them I wasn't changing my mind. Meanwhile, my sister doubled down on social media. She started posting cryptic messages about people who can't handle the truth and how fake personas always crumble eventually. It didn't take a detective to figure out who she was talking about. Some mutual friends noticed too and began distancing themselves from me. At first, I couldn't understand why, but then I learned that my sister was feeding them stories about how I was manipulative and controlling. She even claimed that I was forcing Derek to buy me a house, a complete fabrication. Derek, bless him, had had enough. He reached out to my parents privately and calmly explained how serious the situation was. He told them that my sister's behavior wasn't just toxic, it was harmful to my mental health and our relationship. He asked them to stop pushing me to reconcile with her and to support me instead. My parents didn't argue with him as much as they did with me, but they still didn't fully understand how deep the issue went. Around this time, a cousin reached out to me. She had overheard my sister talking at another family gathering and wanted to warn me. Apparently, my sister had always felt threatened by me. She resented that I had a stable career and an independent life, which she had always struggled with. My relationship with Derek, in her eyes, was just another way I had won at life. The jealousy had been simmering for years, and now it was boiling over. I decided to take a more proactive approach to combat her lies. Without directly addressing the drama, I started sharing more about my career milestones with friends and family. When I landed a major new client, I posted about it. And when I completed a big project, I shared the news. It wasn't to brag, it was to subtly show that I wasn't dependent on anyone for my success. Derek supported me through all of it, but he made it clear that my achievements were mine and mine alone. Despite my efforts to set the record straight, my sister's obsession only grew. She kept spreading false stories, telling anyone who would listen that I was a gold digger and Derek was a fool for staying with me. She even tried to get mutual friends to gang up on me, but it didn't work. The people who really knew me didn't buy into her lies. Around this time, Derek and I decided to take the next step in our relationship. He proposed during a quiet weekend getaway, and I said yes. We didn't want a big wedding, just something small and intimate with close friends and family. Naturally, my sister wasn't invited. When she found out, she lost it. She called me, screaming and accusing me of being manipulative for excluding her. I hung up on her and blocked her number. Derek did the same on all his platforms after she started sending him long, rambling messages about how I was ruining the family. I warned my parents that if they tried to pressure me into inviting her, I'd cut contact with them too. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. I couldn't keep letting them enable her behavior. They were upset, but reluctantly agreed to stay out of it. As we started planning the wedding, my sister tried to sabotage it from the sidelines. She reached out to mutual friends and family members, telling them not to attend because our relationship was fake. Thankfully, my close friends rallied around me. They reassured me that her antics wouldn't affect the day and offered to help with the planning to make sure everything went smoothly. With their support, Derek and I focused on what really mattered: us. We started choosing venues, picking out invitations, and dreaming about our future together. The drama was still there, but it felt distant now, like background noise we could tune out. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. We were building a life together, and no amount of negativity from my sister could take that away. The fallout from cutting her off wasn't easy, but it was worth it. My boundaries were stronger, my circle was smaller but more supportive, and I was finally starting to feel like myself again. The wedding was still months away, but I knew one thing for sure: it was going to be a celebration of love, happiness, and the life Derek and I were creating, free from toxicity. Update 2. The wedding day was everything Derek and I hoped for: intimate, joyful, and drama-free. We kept it small, inviting only our closest friends and family who had supported us through everything. The ceremony was held at a beautiful garden venue just outside the city, with flowers blooming and sunlight streaming through the trees. As I walked down the aisle, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. This was the life I was building, surrounded by people who truly cared about us. Of course, my sister wasn't there. Her absence didn't go unnoticed. A few relatives asked why she wasn't invited, and I kept my response short: it wasn't the right decision for us. Most people seemed to accept it, though I caught whispers here and there. Some family members, particularly those who were closer to her, didn't bother hiding their judgment. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to let her presence, or her absence, overshadow such an important day. The real drama began the day after the wedding. My sister somehow got her hands on some photos from the event, probably from a mutual friend who attended, and posted them on social media. She captioned them with something like, "When you're not invited but still live rent-free," in their heads. It didn't take long for people to start tagging me and sending me screenshots. I was furious, not because of the post itself, but because she was once again inserting herself into my life when I had gone out of my way to keep her out. Derek decided to handle it directly. He contacted his lawyer, who drafted a cease and desist letter, warning her to stop defaming us publicly. It wasn't just about the wedding photos. It was about the months of rumors, accusations, and outright lies she had spread. The letter was sent to her the following week. She didn't respond directly, but the post disappeared shortly after, and her online antics toned down, for a while. The fallout from the wedding was bigger than I expected. Some family members sided with my sister, accusing me of being cold-hearted for excluding her. A few even reached out to tell me I should be the bigger person and try to mend the relationship. I didn't argue. I simply told them I wasn't interested in engaging with someone who had spent so much time tearing me down. That answer wasn't enough for everyone, and I noticed a shift in how some relatives interacted with me. It hurt, but I wasn't about to backtrack on my decision. Amid all this, my professional life took an exciting turn. A few weeks after the wedding, I landed a major client, one of the biggest names in my industry. It was a huge milestone, one that proved my work spoke for itself. I shared the news with my close circle and posted a quick update online. The support I received was overwhelming, but it was also a subtle way to shut down any lingering doubts about my career. Meanwhile, my sister's reputation was crumbling. Mutual friends who had initially taken her side started distancing themselves from her. People were tired of her toxic behavior and constant need for attention. And it was a slow unraveling, but it was happening. One of those friends even reached out to me, apologizing for believing the lies and admitting they now saw her true colors. My parents, who had been hesitant to fully acknowledge the situation, finally admitted my sister had taken things too far. My mom called me one evening and said she was sorry for not stepping in sooner. She didn't excuse my sister's behavior, but she did try to explain it, how she had always been insecure and felt like she had to compete with me. It wasn't much of an apology, but it was something. Shortly after, my sister sent me an email. It was a long-winded apology, filled with phrases like, "I was just looking out for Derek, and I didn't mean to hurt you." It felt hollow, more like an attempt to save face than a genuine acknowledgement of her actions. I didn't reply. I had made my boundaries clear, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way back into my life. The extended family was a different story. Some of them continued to side with my sister, making it clear they didn't approve of how I'd handled things. I decided to cut ties with those relatives as well. If they couldn't see the harm my sister had caused, then they weren't people I wanted to keep in my life. Derek and I went on a luxurious honeymoon a month later, a 2-week trip to the Maldives. The photos we shared were filled with sunsets, crystal clear water, and us just being happy. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone, but it did feel good to show the world we were thriving despite everything. As my sister's lies unraveled, her social circle continued to shrink. The constant drama she stirred up wasn't worth it for most people, and she found herself increasingly isolated. I heard from a cousin that she was struggling to keep friendships and that her work life wasn't going well either. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, but I also didn't feel bad for her. She had made her choices. For Derek and me, life moved forward. We started looking at properties for a vacation home and talked about the future we wanted to build together. The drama with my sister felt like a distant memory, one that had taught me the value of boundaries and the importance of choosing peace over chaos. The best part, I realized I didn't need to get back at her. My success, my happiness, and the life I was building with Derek were revenge enough. In the end, the best thing I ever did was let her go. Update 3. The fallout from my sister's behavior started catching up to her faster than I expected. The more she tried to control the narrative, the more cracks began to show. Mutual friends who once believed her stories about me started seeing through her, especially as her accusations grew more ridiculous. People don't like being lied to, and when they started comparing notes, they realized she'd been manipulating everyone. Her social standing took a nosedive. Friends who had been loyal for years began distancing themselves. One mutual friend told me they were tired of her constant need to one-up everyone and her obsession with tearing me down. Another stopped responding to her calls altogether. She must have noticed, but instead of reflecting, she doubled down on the lies. Her job became the next casualty. I found out through a cousin that someone had anonymously reported her online antics to her workplace. Her manager confronted her about the passive-aggressive posts and asked her to stop bringing personal drama into her professional life. She didn't lose her job, but she was humiliated and warned to maintain professionalism moving forward. Knowing her, that must have been a massive blow to her ego. Meanwhile, my parents were growing more frustrated with her. They'd always been quick to dismiss her behavior as just how she is, but as the family became more divided, they started realizing how much damage she was causing. My mom called me a few times to vent about how difficult it had become to deal with her. My dad, who rarely got involved in family drama, even admitted to me that her actions were out of control. It didn't change much, she was still their daughter, but I could tell they were losing patience. Then came the financial problems. For years, she'd boasted about being more successful than me. She painted herself as the sibling who had everything figured out, but rumors started circulating that she wasn't doing as well as she claimed. She had racked up credit card debt and was struggling to keep up with her bills. It made sense, her lifestyle never matched what I knew about her income. Still, it was shocking to hear how far she'd stretched herself to keep up appearances. While her life was unraveling, mine was thriving. I received an email notifying me that I'd been nominated for a prestigious award in my industry. A few weeks later, I won. It was surreal to be recognized on such a big stage for something I loved doing. Derek was my biggest cheerleader, surprising me with a celebration dinner and encouraging me to keep pushing myself. Around the same time, his company secured a major international deal, setting us up for even more financial stability. We started seriously looking at vacation homes, something we'd only talked about before. But my sister wasn't done. As if her previous attempts to discredit me weren't enough, she turned her attention to Derek. She started spreading rumors that his wealth was exaggerated and that he was involved in shady business dealings. It was laughable, but it wasn't harmless. When we found out she was telling these lies to people in our extended family, Derek's lawyer stepped in again. Another cease and desist letter was sent, this time making it clear that further defamation would result in legal action. The family continued to split. Aunts and uncles who had initially stayed neutral began siding with me, frustrated with my sister's inability to let things go. At the same time, a few relatives who were closer to her tried to defend her, claiming she was just misunderstood and going through a rough time. I stayed firm. Unless she took accountability for her actions, there was no going back. Isolation forced her to rethink her approach, but not enough to admit fault. Her dwindling social circle and strained relationships didn't stop her from playing the victim. My parents, ever hopeful, tried to arrange a family meeting to mend fences. I refused to attend unless she offered a sincere apology beforehand, which of course never came. At one family gathering, I decided to address the rumors head-on. When the topic inevitably came up, I calmly explained my achievements, my career, and my relationship with Derek. I didn't say anything negative about her. I didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. By the end of the night, the room was buzzing with whispers about how wrong she had been. I overheard one cousin say, "She really had us fooled," which felt like a small victory. A few cousins reached out to me afterward, apologizing for believing her lies and offering their support. They told me they admired how I had handled everything, and that they were embarrassed to have doubted me. It didn't erase the past, but it was nice to know that people were starting to see the truth. My sister's personal life was falling apart too. She went through a messy breakup, and her financial struggles became more apparent. She was forced to cut back on her lifestyle, which only added to her frustration. Despite everything, I held my boundaries. I didn't reach out, and I didn't let her back into my life. Through it all, I kept focusing on what mattered, my work, my relationship with Derek, and the life we were building together. Cutting her off had been the hardest decision I'd ever made, but every day it became clearer that it was the right one. Her choices had brought her to this point, and I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her. For the first time in years, I felt free. Update 4. Out of the blue, I received an email from my sister. It was long, wordy, and framed as an apology, but the tone didn't sit right. Between the lines, it was clear she hadn't changed. She blamed misunderstandings and claimed she was just trying to protect Derek from me, which made no sense at all. I left the email unanswered. At this point, words meant nothing. Her actions over the years had shown exactly who she was. My parents, predictably, jumped in. They called and messaged, urging me to accept her apology. According to them, it was my responsibility to keep the family together. I reminded them that I had already tried that for years, and it had only brought me heartache. I told them I wouldn't even consider reconciliation unless her behavior changed, and even then, it would take more than an email to undo the damage. While all this was happening, an incredible opportunity came my way. I was invited to speak at a prestigious industry event, something I had dreamed about for years. It was a chance to share my journey as a graphic designer and inspire others. Preparing for the event was a whirlwind, but Derek was there every step of the way, cheering me on. After my presentation, he surprised me with a custom-designed piece of artwork, a tribute to my career. It was thoughtful, personal, and exactly the kind of support I'd always wanted from a partner. My sister's desperation became more apparent when she showed up uninvited to a family event. I hadn't planned to attend, but decided at the last minute to go and spend time with relatives I hadn't seen in a while. She must have known I'd be there because she arrived shortly after me, pretending like it was a coincidence. She cornered me, trying to talk, but I calmly told her that trust couldn't be rebuilt without genuine change and accountability. The confrontation wasn't dramatic, but it was public enough for the rest of the family to see. Afterward, my parents seemed to finally understand the depth of her behavior. They didn't defend her this time. Instead, they looked embarrassed and avoided bringing her up for the rest of the event. It was a small shift, but it felt significant. Around this time, Derek's family became an even bigger part of my life. His siblings and their spouses welcomed me wholeheartedly, creating the kind of family dynamic I had always wished for. They celebrated my wins, supported me through challenges, and made me feel valued. It was a stark contrast to what I'd experienced with my own family, and it filled a void I hadn't realized was so deep. As my life continued to move forward, my sister started spiraling. She had another meltdown on social media, posting a long rant blaming everyone else for her problems. She accused the family of turning against her and claimed I was manipulating everyone. Her remaining friends, tired of the drama, began cutting ties. One even reached out to me to apologize for believing her lies and admitted they'd blocked her after her latest post. Instead of letting her antics consume me, I decided to invest in myself. I launched a passion project I'd been dreaming about, mentoring young designers who wanted to break into the industry. It gained traction quickly, and I started receiving messages from people who found it helpful and inspiring. It was a reminder that I didn't need to engage in her negativity. I could channel my energy into something positive. Derek and I also took a big step forward by purchasing a beautiful lakefront property. It was a dream come true, a peaceful retreat where we could escape the chaos and focus on our future. Sharing photos of the house online felt like a quiet victory, not to rub it in anyone's face, but to show that we were thriving despite everything. The extended family, for the most part, sided with me. Cousins and aunts who had previously stayed neutral began openly criticizing my sister's behavior. They told her she needed to grow up and take responsibility, which only fueled her bitterness. At family gatherings, the tension was palpable, but I kept my distance and let her deal with the consequences of her actions. My parents eventually reached a breaking point. They sat me down and apologized fully, admitting they had enabled her behavior for far too long. My mom said she regretted not stepping in sooner and vowed to do better. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it felt sincere. For the first time, I believed they were truly on my side. As I grew closer to Derek's family, my bonds with my own parents began to improve too. We created new traditions, like having dinner together without the extended family, which gave us a chance to reconnect without distractions. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Meanwhile, my sister hit rock bottom. She lost her job after failing to meet deadlines and clashing with coworkers. With no savings and mounting debt, she was forced to move back in with my parents. According to a cousin, she spent most of her days blaming everyone else for her situation, refusing to acknowledge her role in it. Despite everything, I stayed firm in my boundaries. I didn't reach out, and I didn't let her back into my life. I was focused on my work, my relationship, and the new chapter Derek and I were building together. Cutting her out wasn't just the best decision for me, it was the turning point that allowed me to finally live without the weight of her toxicity. Update 5. Not long after moving back in with my parents, my sister finally hit what I can only describe as her breaking point. I heard through a cousin that she'd been forced to take a hard look at her life. She was no longer the center of attention, her circle of friends had all but disappeared, and her financial troubles were mounting. With nowhere else to turn, she sent me another email. This one was different. There were no excuses, no passive-aggressive digs, and no blame shifting. She acknowledged how much damage she'd done over the years and admitted she had been jealous of my success and independence. She apologized for spreading lies about Derek and me, for her public stunts, and for the strain she'd put on the family. She asked for another chance, not to go back to how things were, but to try and start fresh. I didn't respond right away. As much as I wanted to believe her words, I needed to see actions, not promises. I spoke to my parents, who assured me they were holding her accountable now. They'd started enforcing boundaries at home, making it clear they wouldn't tolerate any more excuses or outbursts. They even encouraged her to seek therapy, which, to my surprise, she did. They didn't share many details, but they mentioned she was taking it seriously and trying to work on herself. While this was unfolding, my life continued to flourish. My passion project mentoring young designers gained even more traction, and I was invited to collaborate on a major community initiative aimed at supporting underrepresented voices in the industry. It felt incredible to be making an impact, not just for myself but for others, too. Derek's business also reached new heights. He expanded internationally, opening offices in 2 new countries. To celebrate, we hosted a small gathering at our lakefront property, inviting close friends, family, and a few of his business partners. The event was perfect, a reminder of how far we'd come despite everything. The first time I saw my sister again was at a cousin's wedding. I wasn't sure what to expect, but she kept her distance for most of the event. Toward the end of the night, she approached me. She didn't try to force a long conversation or bring up the past. Instead, she congratulated me on my recent successes and kept it brief. For the first time, she seemed genuine. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was a step, a tentative truce. I could see that she was trying, but I wasn't ready to let her back into my life completely. Trust takes time, and after everything, I wasn't going to rush it. Still, I appreciated the effort and decided to leave the door open, even if just a crack. My life continued to move forward in ways I never imagined. With Derek's unwavering support, I began exploring new opportunities, including a potential book deal about my professional journey. It wasn't something I'd ever considered before, but the idea of sharing my story and helping others inspired me. Meanwhile, my parents made a conscious effort to rebuild their relationship with me. We started spending more time together, dinners, weekend visits, even family game nights. They prioritized me in a way they hadn't before, and it felt like we were finally moving toward a healthier dynamic. As for my sister, she remained in the background. She was still a part of family events, but she no longer tried to dominate the conversation or stir up drama. From what I heard, she was focused on rebuilding her life, working, going to therapy, and trying to repair relationships she'd damaged. While I couldn't forget the past, I was glad to see her taking responsibility. In the meantime, my work continued to grow. The community initiative I'd been part of gained national attention, and my contributions were recognized by leaders in the industry. It was surreal to see the impact of something I'd started as a small passion project. Every step forward felt like a quiet victory, proof that I'd made the right choices for myself, even when they were difficult. Looking back, the decision to distance myself from my sister wasn't just about cutting out toxicity. It was about reclaiming my peace and building a life that felt authentically mine. The support from Derek, my parents' eventual understanding, and the encouragement from friends and colleagues all played a role. But ultimately, it was my own boundaries and choices that allowed me to move forward. In the end, the closure I found didn't come from a dramatic moment or a grand resolution. It came from the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd chosen happiness and stability over chaos and conflict. My sister's journey is her own, and while I hope she continues to grow, I've realized that my peace doesn't depend on her. Now, as I sit on the deck of our lake house, watching the sun set over the water, I can't help but feel grateful. Not for the struggles, but for the strength I found in overcoming them. I built the life I deserved, surrounded by people who truly support me. And that, I think, is the ultimate resolution.